Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Spiritual Inspire podcast. I'm your host, Claudiu Murgan. Please subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and like the interview. My guest today is Marlin. Marlin, you have so much experience that trying to pin you down to two, three sentences is not fair. And I think we will reveal everything in due course during this interview. I will only mention that you are the author of the book, The Contemplative Navel, which is quite a unique book. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Um, you are my first guest with this particular type of experience, circus experience. How did you get into circus and how that experience affected your life in general and maybe the spiritual side of your life?
Okay, now that's an interesting question. How did the circus impact my spiritual life? Well, looking back on it, there are inflection points in one's life. In my life, this was an incident where I was aspiring to be a clown. I was working on street corners and children's parties. I was working at a cheese store, juggling cheese balls and salamis to get people into the store. And these two clowns saw me and offered me a job in the circus. Okay, so right there, that's one of those inflection points in a person's life where every kid wants to get the offer to join the circus. So I left everything, ran away with the circus to be a clown, and I got fired after the third day. Now, when you have your dream ripped out of your heart, that is a catharsis. And when you have a deep catharsis like that, there's not much left to turn to. So, the existential crisis, if I get fired as a clown, what am I good for? The very next day on the lot, I came back to collect $10 that I loaned to a guy on the lot. And he was surprised that I did it. He was a total stranger. He took care of elephants. I came back to collect that $10. And this little gnomish man that looked like he belonged living underneath a bridge came up to me and says, "I think I know you, kid." And I'm going, "No, I've never seen you before in my life. I'm 18, I'm skinny, I've got long hairs, I'm a hippie." This guy is just like this gnarly old man. I know you, kid. I've seen you before." "No, I never have." He goes, "You want a job taking care of elephants?" And I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, I'm out of a job." "Sure." He goes, "Have you ever done it?" I go, "No." "Have you been around any livestock?" I said, "Yeah, horses and cows." He goes, "You'll be fine." So I get the phone number. I call up his boss. I go out and take this job taking care of elephants for 14 months. Now, how does that connect with my spiritual path? Elephants have killed more people than all of the other circus acts combined by twice. So every single day, I was in mortal danger. And people think, oh, elephants are docile, whatever. All it takes is a kick. All it takes is a toss of the head, them knocking me down and keeping me down, trampling me. So many people have died from elephants. And so for me to constantly contemplate this on a daily basis, what brings you closest to a spiritual path than contemplating your own death at any given moment?
That's interesting. And I didn't know about these statistics. And to be honest with you, I did study elephants because I wrote about them in my first book, which I mentioned to you prior to starting this interview, The Decadence of Our Souls. And I really went into their behavior around the other animals, how the herd is created. And I didn't, again, come across these statistics, but it's good to know. And in fact, I saw some videos of people who really loved elephants, and they were brought to a very harsh reality when they were kicked by the elephants in their own environment in India, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my father also taught philosophy. So I was cutting my teeth on Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, and you get these questions asked you when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, and it really gets you thinking. So I continued that into my teen years, reading everything I possibly could on the topic. Ram Dass, Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, Castaneda. I mean, I was a voracious consumer of quote unquote the new age spirituality, which broke from conventional Western religious dogma.
Yes, and you mentioned Castaneda. Based on the timeline from the books, his training spanned over decades, and his biggest weakness, from my perspective, was that he was still trying to logically, make sense of what was happening to him and what was being taught. So he won't let go of the left brain template. Do you find that interesting?
About letting go of the left brain template?
Yes, while being taught shamanic teachings and having all kind of out-of-body experiences and teleportation, and he was still trying to make sense of all these experiences. I mean, in a logical way.
Yes, and the book was a fictitious account. We know this. He copped to that. So what his ruminations were about what was going on in that were all conjecture. Now, I can only speak to my own set of circumstances because in my own philosophy, the divine is plural, but our experience of it is singular. So how we experience the divine is going to come through our own particular filter. Someone may go, yes, I know I'm connected with God because my toes get hot. Your toes get hot? What? Your toes don't get hot? I thought everybody's toes got hot when they were connecting with the divine. No, for me, it comes across different. My scalp itches. So, we all get to contemplate how we connect with the greater all that is. And, I've had incidences that were so far outside the realm of a possibility that I could only ascribe it to being divine intervention. Here's an example. This is a great story. Back in the early 80s, there was a magazine called Magical Blend. I know, early 80s, and everybody's going, dude, that is so last millennium. So Magical Blend had an interview with a guy named Marcel Vogel, who was a high energy physicist. He was doing the quantification of psychic energy using optical cut quartz. So I read this article, and I'm working on cruise ships going in and out of LA Harbor. I'm working on this ship, and I'm doing my juggling act. And two people in the audience goes, he's one of us. He's going to make himself known to us. The next day, I'm at the pool, and there's an ice carving demonstration, and this big portly man is standing next to me. And one of the people who saw me the night before goes, there he is. He's standing next to you. Don't worry. He's going to make himself known to us. A few days later, I get into a conversation. A woman is wearing a crystal around her neck. I said, did you see the article about Marcel Vogel and Magical Blend about crystals? And she says, he's on board the ship. Psychics from all over the world have come to take a cruise with him and listen to his papers. So I'm like, what? So now I'm hanging out with these psychics. And I asked one of them, can you recommend a book? Because my mother thinks I'm out on Planet Mondo with this stuff. And she says, get The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore by Alan Cohen. Now, back in the early 80s, there is no Borders, there is no Walden Books, there is no internet. I can't find this book. I looked for it for 5 years. 5 years later, goes on, 6 years, I quit show business, I leave society, I go to live in a treehouse in Hawaii, in the jungles. Down the street is a retreat center. I'm having difficulty with the group of people that I'm living with because it's Gilligan's Island turned Lord of the Flies. So I'm talking with one of the people at the retreat center saying, hey, buy me dinner and I'll do a show for your group, your retreat. And they said, sure. So they buy me dinner. I break out my Las Vegas act. And these people are like, what are you doing in the jungle? This is phenomenal. I'm going, yeah, well, and this guy walks up to me and says, thank you so much for following your dream. Here, have my book. And it's Alan Cohen giving me The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Interesting. And you know what? I know of Vogel because I studied him. And in fact, I interviewed one of his assistants or teammates 4 or 5 years ago. She was also involved in water research because I wrote about water. I wanted to interview her. So, and see another circle closing by you mentioning about him.
It's those circles that close that I've had so many incidences like that in my life where I'm left with, how can this possibly be? And then I start thinking about the idea of, drawing things to you, the resonance component. If you ring a C tuning fork on one side of the room, the C tuning fork on the other side of the room will start to vibrate. Those sympathetic
Yes.
vibrations. Yeah.
Yeah. And another example I can give you regarding what you said, that each of us has our own interpretation of divine manifestation. I recently watched Kubra, is a Turkish TV series on Netflix, just because it was the name and the description attracted me. So it's about a young Turkish guy who works in a metal shop. He doesn't have too much direction in life. And suddenly
Yeah.
he receives a message on his phone and he said, "You are special." So he doesn't believe, he replies, "Why, who are you?" But that message comes back and he leads him to believe that he talks to the divine. And in the end, in fact, he was talking to an artificial intelligence program, which was very, very advanced. And in the end, when people came to him to tell him that we were behind the messages, because he became very popular, he said, "Believe in Allah, do what Allah says," and things like this, because they are Muslim. And when these people came to him to reveal the truth behind all the actions and the messages on the phone, he said, "You know what? God or Allah put you there to send me these messages, and this is my interpretation of the divine, because I did good and I helped people who believed in me, that I believe in Allah." So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's I've come to realize that I really don't want to meet God when I'm dead, because I'm just not at my best.
No, I think our goal should be to meet God, the divine, while we're alive. That's for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why all these gurus in India even came to North America and said, "Guys, you have to do this if you want to connect, and you have to follow this path if you want to connect." So not all of us, or sorry, not many of us follow their advice or believe in what they were saying, but they were right.
Yeah, again, it comes back to our own personal interpretation. We hear the term God is love. Okay, so the way that I interpret that is, when we feel love, when we're having the experience of loving something, that's God flowing through us. Right? And I also find it kind of interesting that when we laugh and when we cry, our bodies shake. We do this sobbing thing and our bodies shake. And I attribute that to the fact that there's so much energy running through us at that point, so much emotional energy, that the body just starts to shake because it doesn't know how any other way to process that information. It's like a wire heating up, right? When
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
all the energy rolling through it. So, and what causes the wire to heat up are the impurities in the wire. When there's no impurities, you have all of the light with none of the heat. And those impurities in our lives are the things, those negative thoughts, the traumas that we refuse to release. And that's what keeps us from being in that full state of unconditional loving. And that's Christ consciousness, I guess, if you want to call it that, or you can call it Buddha consciousness, when you have infinite compassion for the circumstances and the people around you.
Yes, and if I'm not mistaken, Linton, in his book, The Biology of Belief, mentioned that every cell has 0.07 volts, I think. So overall, with the trillions of cells we have in our bodies, we contain an immense amount of energy, which if we know how to direct it, will turn into miracles.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Marlin,
I don't know. I mean, we are walking miracles already. It's just that we don't take the time to really even give that much thought. We just don't. And the sometimes it's the cathartic experiences in our life, the near-death experiences that cause us to, take an inventory of what we're really doing. I mean, I stop and think if I'm supposed to live each day as if it were my last, I don't want to do the dishes.
Yeah, interesting. And because you mentioned that we are indeed uh, amazing entities and amazing organical computers and bodies walking around, and we didn't realize our full potential. What's your take on transhumanism and the fact that a lot of people want to embed technology into their bodies for other reasons than medical? Medical is different, but for, let's say, to enhance their capabilities, which they don't know, they are not aware of their own capabilities now, but they want enhancement.
Well, okay. So, my understanding is we only use 10% of our brain. We might be very dangerous if the other 90% were released and we didn't have the ethical um, compass to manage and direct that power. Now, as far as enhancement, humans have been taking spiritual or psychological enhancing substances throughout time, right? Whether it's mushrooms or peyote or ayahuasca or alcohol or cannabis or whatever it is, to find themselves in a state that is different than the one that they're in. So to the degree that people, excuse me, let me get some water here. Sorry. To the degree that people explore these kinds of consciousness expanding substances, which all was happening during the 60s and 70s when the mystics from the East were coming over to America. And then you had the counterculture that went along with the ingestion of these particular substances. On my own personal journey, I was out on my own at 17, living in Texas, and there mushrooms grow wild in the cow patties. So we would go out into the fields and harvest these mushrooms. And I remember coming back with a whole grocery bag and making a big pot of soup and eating it like it was soup. Well, okay. I had my epiphany that I was God on that evening. Now, to be clear, it's not that I am the totality of God, but that God is running through me. And so if God is running through me, then I am God. And what it comes down to is like once you've reached the mountain, right? And you come back and then it's like, now what? Okay, I'm God. Now what? What are you going to do with that, right? And so that's why they have the expression, before enlightenment, I pounded rice. After enlightenment, I pounded rice.
Yes.
So once you reach enlightenment, once you have that epiphany, then I felt as though, well, it's up to me to use that and make the world a better place. And then many, many years later, I went out into the Arizona desert. I'm now in my late 20s, early 30s, having my Saturn return. And I'm going, I've got to find my purpose. Why am I here? What am I doing here? So I go out into the desert, take some more plant medicine, have this staring contest with a lizard that goes on for what seems like 3 weeks. And then it dawned on me, I'm here to inspire others. I'm here to inspire others. And part of that inspiration comes from my enthusiasm. And the root of the word enthusiasm, entheosis, means in spirit. You are filled with spirit. Okay, well, that pretty much nails me to a T. And so
Yes.
that's and then it's just finding the best way to get that message out to folks.
Yes, and the enhancement you mentioned is still short-lived because for mushrooms could be 2 3 hours, for ayahuasca could be 5 or 6. But in the end, if you get your answer, that enhancement and that state of consciousness is short-lived, and then you have to work yourself, work on yourself to be in that state of consciousness permanently. And I think
Yes,
that's the tough part for every single one of us.
absolutely. That's the difficulty. You're here trying to manifest the non-manifest in a manifest world, right? So I'm trying to bring this experience of that to others. And for me, a practical way to do this, a hands-on way to connect with the infinite is to go find a dark sky. I've been involved with dark sky advocacy since 1987. When the first time I saw the Milky Way, I mean, like really saw it in the California desert and thought, my God, this goes by unnoticed every night because people's lights are on. So what I came to, I mean, I ended up, I eventually went on to create a human light show that took for 21 years, done in the dark, to raise awareness about the loss of our night skies due to light pollution and our fear of death because we can no longer see the night sky. For hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, humans have seen the night sky. They knew where they came from. They knew where they would go to. They felt connected to the infinite, to the all that is. They didn't fear death. They didn't have the same fear of death as we do in our culture because we're cut off from that. We're cut off from the infinite, from the cosmos. We can't, if we can't see the heavens that we belong to, how long does it take before we forget that we belong to the heavens?
Yes, and that's why the indigenous people are much more connected than us because they stay around a bonfire, and when that's gone, they can still see the sky and the stars and feel the air, the breeze, the trees. So it's normal, and we lost all this with its civilization, and that's in a way normal to many people.
Yeah, yeah. It's astonishing. 80% of North Americans can't see the Milky Way, 60% of Europeans can't. And so I was on another podcast about pilgrimages the other day, and she was asking me about pilgrimages. I'm going, if a pilgrimage is to go to a place so you feel more connected, so you have the spiritual experience, whether it's walking to this or going to Mecca and walking around. Okay, it's all about feeling connected to the greater source. Going, go right to the source. Just go to a dark sky. That's a pilgrimage. Now you're out underneath. You're looking at the face of God right there. You don't need an object or a place. It's all up from here.
Yes, and indeed, and I mentioned many times in these interviews about the vision quest, and which I really want to do at one point in time, maybe this year or next, if I find the right spot, because you really have to be in an area where you feel safe and you know the environment, or you start knowing the environment and stay there overnight and feel the nature and be one with nature. And that's another test for us as humans to go deeper into knowing ourselves.
Yeah, and it's hard to get to know ourselves if we spend so much time scrolling. We're just getting to know the awash of information that's out there. And I can understand the appeal because it's always something new, something novel, something new, something novel. And that's just it. Is God novel? Probably not. I mean, it's probably the least novel thing in the world is this creation of God. So one of the things I do want to mention, I've been living in Southeast Asia for the last year, and right now I've been living in Vietnam, and I've been to 47 countries. And Vietnam has a very interesting take on things. They don't worship a deity per se. What they do pay homage to is their ancestors. Now, I have never met a people more kind, more honest, more fun, more easy to laugh than the Vietnamese. And I'm thinking about this going, why is this? I've been to Thailand. There's lots and lots of temples there, lots of monks walking around. And, it's not the same vibe as in Vietnam. So my thinking on this, and I was talking to my friend, I'm going, so you don't really, pay homage to a deity, Buddha or God or whatever it is. Instead, you're honoring your ancestors. So do you believe that your ancestors are like right there with you? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so they believe in cause and effect. So their thinking is, I leave things in my bicycle basket all the time. I've never had anything, the only thing taken once was a raincoat, a rain poncho during the rain, and someone took it off my bike. It's like, fine, they needed the rain poncho. But as far as honest and kindness, without religion, just simply honoring and respecting your ancestors and going, if the idea of praying to a deity is because that's where we came from, the Vietnamese are much more practical because they realize, no, we came from our ancestors. That's where we came from. So we're paying homage to them, and we're leading a good life because they're watching us. And it's like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And at the same time, they think that if they do something wrong in this life, will perpetuate the
karma.
How can I call it? The karma to the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. They and they really don't want to load their children up with whatever karma that they create. I mean, honest to God, I lost my wallet twice. And it came back to me with everything in it, the money, the credit cards, everything. And I'm like, I love this place. The people here are so friendly. They're so happy. And no religion to speak of. And so I see this as freeing them up to just fully embrace family, affection, compassion, community, and what a beautiful, beautiful culture.
Yes, I mean, we know religion brings wars and all kinds of
strife,
nasty things from within. Yes, people without religion but believing in their ancestors could be a solution for them in that particular case. Yes,
it's if you take it back to God asking him to kill his son. God asking Abraham to kill his son. That's a lot of trauma. And the son looking at the father with his knife over his neck, the child is going to live with that trauma for the rest of his life too. So it's like, why perpetuate this kind of belief system if not to control people through fear?
Yes.
Religion is about controlling people through fear. What will happen to you if you are a bad person? Whereas, I guess you can say the law of karma, cause and effect, is kind of similar, but it's more in your own hands. It's my actions, how I show up with other people. Some of the laws in the Old Testament are just, they don't scan in today's world. Like I get the whole idea of honor thy mother and thy father, right? This was a big one for me because I had toxic parents. I had parents who were abusive. So it's like, okay, how am I going to love these people if they treat me this way? And it took reading a lot of books and coming to the understanding you do not have to put yourself in a toxic environment. You don't have to be in it. But it wasn't until I came to the place of compassion for them, for their actions, did I feel as though I'd grown beyond the karmic imprint that they put on me.
Yes, and I have this type of discussions with a family member these days, and it's impossible for that person to ask for forgiveness or forgive certain people in her life because certain things they did to her. And doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter how I approach a subject from religion or from spirituality, the reaction is the same. So I'm going to stop there because I tried everything in a gentle way, and I'm going to just stand back and let it go because there is nothing else I can do?
There's only so much that you can offer anybody. You can bring them to the door, but they must walk through it. And anger is like a knife with no handle, right? You use it against somebody else and you're cutting yourself at the same time.
Indeed. Yeah.
And
Marlin, you mentioned that you lived in Hawaii. I know
yes.
it's a special place, amazing energies. Have you had any special experiences while living there?
Well, I mentioned the one before about meeting Alan Cohen. I have a place on the Big Island. I homesteaded some land. It's off the grid. I planted hundreds of items, many scores of food-bearing trees, which are now all making food, which is a great deal of satisfaction to take a coconut, stick it in the ground, and have it eventually make more coconuts. There have been some very unusual events that have taken place at the property. I have a tree deck, and there was a therapist who was staying there. I have an Airbnb, and she was up on the tree deck where it's get Wi-Fi signal, and she's doing a counseling session with somebody. Many months later, another person staying at the property, and she looks at the deck and she goes, "I did a counseling session with my therapist when she was up in that deck." It's like, okay, that's again one of these two people, neither one of them know me except through this, and they connected in that way. So yeah, a lot of curious connections in that way. It's right next to where I live is right next to the lava, where the lava flows are, near the volcano. And you're living in balance there. You realize at any given moment, all of what you've created can be taken away. So there's very much a sense of impermanence living in Hawaii. And when people say, "Oh, Big Island," I've been to the Big Island, and I go, "Yeah, well, it's bigger now." It's and so you're living on this this hotspot, this active place on the planet where lava's been spewing up forth for millions of years, and the tectonic plates shift and it creates the islands. So yeah, right there, there's a sense of impermanence and just how short everything is compared to our lives and our memories.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I interviewed a guest, and she lived there for 2 years on all the islands, and she was there when the fires in Maui happened, and she was up in the mountains, and her guides told her, "Don't worry, you are going to be safe." And very soon she's going back to help those people who are in need of help.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes happening right now on the islands. I moved out there in the 80s, or late 80s. I was part of a bunch of jugglers that tried to create a collective, a community, but there wasn't any template for communication, so it became very cliquish, and it wasn't a community, it was a club. There's a distinction between the two, one being inclusive, the other being exclusive. But back to the spiritual journey, the spiritual path. I honestly believe that the fastest way through a person's karma is humor. When they can find and see the humor in the pain that they're having, then the pain no longer holds them. They're through it, they're past it. And this is why people like the Dalai Lama, they're laughing all the time. These folks who've reached a life, they're laughing all the time. So this is one of the reasons why I've decided to create a course to help bring people to that childlike consciousness again through inspired play, because that's where we have it. The expression in the Bible, "Be ye as little children to enter the kingdom of heaven," right? Yes. Well, little children are full of joy. They're full of curiosity. They love to play. They're constantly giggling. So it's like, well, it looks like heaven on earth right there. Kids have it. And we can take a clue from them if we learn how to have that childlike mind again. So, yeah, I've been working on this for the last year to try to bring that, because people always look at me and they go, "You're like a big kid." I go, "Yeah, why not? Why not be like a big kid? Isn't that more fun than like being a big adult?" There's no fun in being a big adult.
Yes, I think we're afraid to be in that childish uh, tone and mindset again because of society norms, all kind of constraints.
Yes, and there's a distinction between childish and childlike.
Yes, you're
Okay.
right. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's really important for the listener to understand that distinction, because we're trying to get to the childlike place, which is full of wonder and not full of judgment, full of curiosity and not full of aversion, wanting to learn versus hold on to something, and watching kids play. It's astonishing how some of the greatest things in our planet have all been created from watching children play. Einstein said, "Play is the highest form of research." Well, okay, who's going to argue with that man? He also said imagination is more important than knowledge. Great. So how much time do we spend imagining? How much time do we spend playing? These are the times when we're opening ourselves up for more of that bigger message, to come through to us, whatever that is, that inspiration where the divine breathes into you, right? If you believe in the divine. And that's something we all get to decide. Do I want to believe that the world is malevolent or benevolent?
Yes, we are busy working or doing other chores, and we forget to take a break and use our imagination. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's I think it's one of the reasons why people are not they're not happy. There's a lot of people unhappy, even though they have all the trappings of what would make someone happy. Oh, if I have this car, if I have this money, if I have this house, if I have this girlfriend, all those things, I'll be happy. Whereas you just simply make a choice. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy because my legs are working today. I'm going to be happy because I can look and see the world with my eyes, or I can listen to music, or, all of the things, all of the sensorial delights that are built into us. How often do we really take the time to savor that? And so, we always hear about, oh, there's no time like the present. Well,
Yes.
I personally have the philosophy, there is no time, only the present. So if
Yes.
all we have is present, how do we get present? How do we, and for me, you get present by inhabiting your body, because the body and the body's sensations can only exist in the immediate now. You cannot recreate the sensation of pain that you had 2 weeks ago. You cannot create the scent of a rose that you will come to 2 weeks from now. Only in the immediate moment can we be present through our body sensation, whether it's a breath, whether it's the feel of a breeze on your skin, whether you're looking at something, whether you're hearing or tasting something. Now you're immediately present. And that's an exercise that I encourage other people to do, and see how present they can really be. Can you put that strawberry in your mouth and just focus on the taste of that without any other thought coming into your head, right? That single focus, that single-minded focusness. And
Yeah,
they say that's go ahead.
That's a challenge for sure.
Well,
For some,
what is it?
yeah.
They say that enlightenment is simple, it's just not easy.
Yes, indeed. Marlin, you mentioned about your shamanic experiences in Hawaii, in California. And I know a big part of these experiences are coming after the integration. How did it work for you? Did you have the right guidance to integrate? And did you feel that the messages pertain to your phase in life at that particular time?
So you're asking the question about how did I integrate the information once it came through?
Yes.
That's a good question. How is it integrated? It's integrated through being mindful. It's integrated through being cognizant of my interface with other people, my communications with other people, and seeing how what I say and what I do lands on others. To be conscious of that. What is my impact? Now, I realize that everybody's going to have their own interpretation of whatever words I say or whatever things I do. I've been misunderstood the better part of my life. And I recoiled because I went into shame. I thought something was wrong with me. And then once I learned about things like projection and, how other people will heap their own guilt upon you, and me being the good martyr, the good Jewish boy, I took it on. There's something wrong with me. So for me, my biggest hurdle for integration was forgiving myself. And I was forgiving myself for all of the negative thoughts that I had been giving myself. Because though I may be my best audience, I'm also my worst critic. So, coming and going, I've created this conundrum for myself. But yeah, forgiving is for giving. It doesn't work unless you give it. And that act of giving forgiveness to self was probably one of the most difficult things I did. I could not forgive myself. I could forgive others, but not myself. And that was my Sisyphusian challenge, was to continue to bear with this sense of not enoughness, unlovable, not worthy, not deserving. I think most people carry that around. And that's they're having to break through that to come to a place of acceptance, of self-love, self-acknowledgement, self-congratulation. It's difficult because we're also given this lesson: pride comes before the fall. If you're prideful, then it's your ego. And it's like, okay, wait a second. So how am I supposed to feel both good about myself, yet at the same time not being prideful? And
Yes. Yeah, it's a type of a self-inflicted trauma, and we think that we cause pain or we something wrong, and we carry those thoughts with us pretty much the entire life without knowing how to ease them off our psyche. And we don't know how to go to, let's say, a hypnotic therapy through a shamanic experience, or do something to just alleviate this pain.
Yeah, so here's an exercise that I can suggest for folks that I've participated in. It's called the hot seat, golden hot seat. And so you get with your friends, and one person just agrees to sit on the hot seat, and the person facilitating says, "Are you willing to let these people sit in judgment of you?" The person on the hot seat says, "Yeah, okay." So then each person in turn says, "The shadow I see in you is this." Right? And the person on the hot seat just listens, and all they can say is thank you. So it goes around and everybody says, "The shadow I see in you is this." Then the next round is, "The gold I see in you is this." And then everybody goes around and says, "This is the gold I see in you." And repeatedly, without fail, every single time I've done this process, it was harder for people to hear the gold about themselves than the shadow.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's like people being able to take a compliment. All they need to say is thank you instead of brushing it aside or pushing it off or whatever. But being able to take in your gold from others, even though it's a projection, because whatever they're saying about you is their projection, it's their shadow, it's their gold. But to hear the gold and learn how to take it in goes a long ways towards the healing process of being able to embrace the self, by the self,
Yeah, very low self-esteem and self. Yeah, we don't know our value most of the time, and we don't know to work on that either with a therapist or a specialist or even finding guidance in books. Sometimes it's quite hard. Yeah.
It's like I said, it's not my line. Enlightenment's easy. It's just not, and it's simple. It's not easy. Simple, not easy. And and again, this conundrum, how can you be infused with spirit, truly being a spiritually attuned individual and feel bad about yourself? They're totally
Yes,
incompatible.
Yes, you're right.
I don't want to be right.
Marlin, I would like to
want
turn.
to be funny.
Marlin, I would like to turn to your book, The Contemplative Navel, and I have two or three lines which I'd like to expand on, and because we talk about one is nothing is permanent, not even death.
Yeah.
What did you
like
mean
that.
by that? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but let's expand on it, please.
Well, I mean, if the whole idea is that we're, perpetually that energy can't be destroyed, and we just simply, come back reconstituted as another human or as another person, or reincarnated. So that's what that's about. Nothing is and the picture is the little recycling symbol on that page. Yes, nothing is permanent, not even death.
Yes. And again, we're gonna go back into the ether as a soul, and we come back, and that's why that's my interpretation also. Yeah.
Yeah, and they say that you only truly die when people forget you. And again, back to the Vietnamese culture of honoring the ancestors. Not only do they do it during the new year, which is now happening, Tet is coming up. And unlike our new year, which is just like one night, party, drinking, whatever, their new year, like 2 weeks leading up to the beginning of the new year, the whole place is festive and music and people singing and lots of flowers and all kinds of orange trees that are being taken to people's houses. And it's like, wow, they spend a lot of time celebrating the end of the year leading into the new year. Yeah, I don't know why I went. Oh yeah, the idea of honoring the ancestors.
Yes. Another line which fits perfectly into our discussion because we talk about what dark. You said, I like the dark. In it, there are no shadows to be afraid of.
Yeah. So, going back to Jungian psychology, where Jung speaks of the shadow being that thing that we hide, repress, or deny. He never made any inference that the shadow was somehow evil or bad, right? And we did that. We created that. So by being in the dark, there is no shadow to be afraid of. And again, I'm all about darkness because our world has been set afire at night by light pollution. And that's been a lifelong mission for me is to get people to turn off their lights and appreciate being in the dark more.
Yes, and not only that, but in darks we can find peace. I mean, I interviewed Jazz Muhin from Australia, and once or twice a year she goes 3 to 4 weeks in a dark room and meditates and connects to various entities and her higher self, and she comes out of that dark room stronger. And another example is the Koji tribe in the northern Colombia in the mountains.
Yeah.
When the children are born, some of them come with special mission, and they take these children, they raise them in darkness up to like 8, 9 years, and they tell them about the world, how wonderful the world is, how colorful, about the animals, the birds, the plants, the trees, everything. And when those children come out of the dark room, they are amazed. They say, yes, you told us the truth. Indeed, the world is beautiful, but they have enhanced abilities to see beyond the physical world, to see the energies and communicate with
Wow.
nature and other entities as well.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yes, and there is a trip coming up to the Kojis in March. That would be a fantastic opportunity. I don't know if I can go, but I know it's happening because they need help and they need to transfer some of their knowledge and their message to the world wide world, and people are going to listen to them. They are going into their community and listen to what they have to say.
Wow. Wow. Great.
So moving along, yes.
Go ahead. Thanks for taking the time to look through the Contemplative Navel. I appreciate that.
If you want to add anything else about the book, which I didn't mention, please.
The book began when I was at the height of my career in show business, and I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, and I said, "Do entertainers want to be sold out because they're suffering from soul doubt?" And he
Yes.
laughed and said, "You need to write that down." I go, "Why?" He goes, "I don't know, just write it down." So I started keeping a memo pad, and as these things popped into my head, I wrote them down, and then had the thought, well, when I reach 100, I'll get an illustrator and illustrate these. Well, I reached 100 and I was taking some coursework, and my classmates said, "You should do it yourself." They saw me doodling. So after 600 drawings, I captured my style and these two characters, Cyberspace Cadet and Enlightened Man. And they dispense their own particular wisdom on the world. So this was published in 1995. It got great reviews. I only had 2,000 copies printed. So now what I've done is I've created an e-version and colorized them all because I didn't have the money to print in color. So now they're all colorized. They're set in a gallery in frames, and there's a number of new ones that have been added on since then. So it's an expanded compendium now, and not just the 108 illustrations it was before. So
Yeah, so the book is not only funny, is interesting, has nuggets of wisdom. So I encourage everyone to give it a try.
yeah, I mean, reach out to me. Like I said, the e-version is for sale, and it's in a colorized. Yeah, it's for anybody who likes pithy fortune cookie sayings, the pithy stuff. Like, take everything with a grain of gestalt. You know, a lot of people are not going to get that, but those who do will appreciate it, right? Or the truth is so elusive, you need a paradox to catch it.
Yes, I enjoy it. So thank you for sending the book.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Marlin, I heard a lot of channelers and empaths saying that 2024 is a year of deep transformation, both personally and at a global level. What's your feeling about it?
Well, 2024 is the year of the dragon, and dragons are lucky in for an enormous segment of the world's population. The dragons are lucky. As far as it being, you know, who's to say? The world is changing so rapidly from climate change. UFOs have now been accepted as existing and real. That is a paradigm changer. You know, if who knows, 2024, the aliens could possibly just decide to land, maybe someplace out in the Pacific, where it's kind of hard to get to, but there they are. Everybody knows they're there. And how would that change? How would that change our worldview? How would that change our view of the universe? You know, do they have the technology to clean up the carbon mess that we've created? You know, the heating of the planet. They may go, no, this is just part of y'all's role, and you're going to have to deal with it yourself. You know, I suggest people reading Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince, because it's all about death. It's all about dying. He wrote it at the around World War II to explain to children death, and that's why the little prince meets the snake and goes, "Oh, aren't you a little funny animal? You're no bigger than my finger." The snake, yes, but I'm the most powerful because my bite can send you back to the stars. Send you back to the stars. So that's the message he was trying to give little kids, that when you die, you go back to the stars. You know, it's funny. I dated a psychic empath, and she put a lot of stock into what the non-corporeal beings were saying. And then one day I asked her, I go, what makes you think the non-corporeal beings are any wiser than us who have bodies? And boy, did that stop her in her track. She goes, you know what? I don't know why I believe that. Why an entity that doesn't have a body is somehow wiser or more all-knowing than we are?
I mean, my take on that, especially if it's a benevolent being, they're supposed to be at a different level of consciousness. They not having a 3D body, they vibrate differently. I mean, again, this is my personal opinion. That means they have a higher level of consciousness. They will tell that they will try to help as much as possible, because in their world, there is nothing similar to greed, jealousy, envy, and is pretty much more about love and compassion and empathy. I might be wrong, but again, this is my personal perception.
Okay, I get that. And then that accounts for those non-corporeal entities which are benign. What about the non-corporeal entities that are not benign? Are they also now vibrating at higher frequency?
They might be, but if their intention is different, I don't know how to treat them or behave them or, trust them. So I think there are procedures which I usually talk to my guests, which are in the know, on how to differentiate between these type of entities. And there is some universal laws, which if you know how to apply, they are bound by these universal laws to tell you the truth, even if they are ill-intentioned. So this is where we have to be aware of how and with whom we interact on the other side.
Yes, thank you for that. There was a book written in the 80s called Bringers of the Dawn, and the woman who channeled it, her perspective was there's Prime Creator, and Prime Creator is too big for us to understand as humans, so Prime Creator created creator gods and gave them the missive, go forth and create consciousness. Some creator gods created love and light, other creator gods created fear and hate. So now, Prime Creator didn't care. Prime Creator made no judgments about fear and hate over love and light. It was all consciousness to him. And this particular planet has been fought over for, eons and epochs and whatever, because it looks like a bunch of other planets all put together on one planet. So right now, you have a group of people who are driving the world with fear and hate, and others who are trying to drive it with, love and acceptance. And that's the battle that's going out in the political arena, that's going out in the commercial and corporate arena. The forces of quote unquote good, what we deem as good, and the forces of what we deem as quote unquote bad. But those are judgments. And if you're at a place of enlightenment, you're not making those judgments. You're not. You're just simply saying they're doing what they believe is best, and these people are doing what they believe is best. Yes.
And it's Barbara Marciniak who wrote that book.
Thank you. I bring her name in.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's, and we get to decide. We are the creator gods. What are you creating in the world? Are you creating love and light? Or are you creating fear and hate? And in any given moment, we have that choice.
Yeah. Marlin, we're approaching the end of the interview. Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? Wow. You know, if I gave a final thought, then that means I'm done with life. I've got to go. I've got to, you know, it's like final thought.
For the interview, just for this interview.
Oh yeah, okay. So just for this interview. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. What does Einstein and Squid Games have in common? And for those of you who saw Squid Games, and Einstein said, you know, play is the highest form of research. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And at the end of Squid Games, when player 001 is on his deathbed, this old man, and he's saying to the guy who won the Squid Games, who survived it, who's standing next to his deathbed, and he was going, "What, you know, why did you do it? Why did you do it?" And the old man goes, "You know, I remember when I was a kid and me and my friends would spend hours and we'd have so much fun. And I just wanted to feel something again. And I couldn't do that if I spectated." And the guy standing next to his deathbed goes, "So play did that for you?" And the old man goes, "Hell yeah." So he had a chance. This was a man who had more money than was conceivable. And all he wanted to do was get back to that childlike wonder and joy that he had when he was a kid, where he was able to use his imagination and have fun doing it with other people. And so he got to go back to that place of he's a little kid, and he had a blast. It was like the best time he was having. And so, yeah, go out there and play more. Go out there and do the things to play. And when you do that, you know, seek me out. My whole course is about teaching people how to play. You'll have better relationships with your kids, with your coworkers, with your family, with everybody, if we all just take the time to learn how to play and connect with that inner kid again.
Yes, and if you need to heal your inner child, do that and then bring it forward and play, as Marlin said. Marlin, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for having me.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Visuallyinspired.ca, claudiumurgan.com. And until next time, love and gratitude.